Hey everyone, welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We are here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good or be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. You deserve to feel good. We all deserve to feel good. And here is a little video about what we do in the cannabis space as nurses, and then we're going to get right into our show.
Change the paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship, and what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare, and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
It's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers.
Well, there you go. Growing in health, growing in cannabis, blooming in health, blooming in cannabis. Hey, everyone. My name is Sherry Mack, and I'm the Chief Nursing Officer and co-founder of Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse and Vice President of Nursing at Bloom Hemp CBD. And I'm a cannabis nurse, patient, advocate, activist, and a very passionate podcaster here with my partner to change the paradigm of healthcare. And I'm really excited to announce that this is my 7th year podcasting, The Green Nurse Living Your Best Life. I started podcasting in 2018 when the National Council State Boards of Nursing came out with a call to action that all nurses must have 6 essential areas of knowledge when it comes to cannabis as medicine. I started podcasting to share compelling stories of healing and to decrease stigma around this plant, since I too use cannabis daily as medicine. But before we get started on our very exciting show, we have an amazing guest here. We have a little message from our sponsors at Bloom Hemp. Elizabeth, tell us about Bloom Hemp.
Okay, well, Bloom Hemp is a woman and nurse-owned CBD emporium leading with quality, safety, and patient-centered care, offering an array of tinctures, topicals, isolates, capsules, and all that you need, tested for purity, potency, cannabinoids, and terpene profiles. Bloom Hemp is proud to offer a free nurse line, 970-404-HOPE, or you can email us through our services page. Just fill out the short intake form, and we will send you a free email care plan with tips and tricks on how to add these products to your life, as well as lifestyle tips.
All right. Thank you, Bloom Hemp, for sponsoring this show. We are forever grateful. And if you haven't noticed, no one's told you, cannabis nursing has been recognized as a specialty. Shh. And nurses are truly making an impact on advocating for the safe therapeutic use of cannabis by teaching on the endocannabinoid system and how to optimize cannabis for medicine, health, healing and wellness purposes. So really excited to bring on Dr. Codi Peterson today. Our guest is a pediatric pharmacist and a cannabis science expert. Dr. Codi Peterson, leveraging a decade of clinical pharmacy experience, Codi strives to bridge the gap between healthcare and cannabis through education and advocacy. He is a PharmD graduate from, I'm going to say it wrong.
Duquesne
University. I was going to put a little French accent on it. And later graduated with a master's in science in medical cannabis and science therapeutics from the University of Maryland in Baltimore. Dr. Codi is the chief science officer of the Cannigma, a science-forward media company dedicated to helping the world understand cannabis. Dr. Peterson is also an associate clinical professor at UC Irvine, where he contributes to advancing medical education. Additionally, he teaches pharmacology to paramedics in Southern California through OCEMT and continues to practice pharmacy in an emergency department to this day. Codi is co-founder of Pharmacists Cannabis Coalition of California, a public benefit nonprofit dedicated to educating and elevating California pharmacists in the cannabis space. Today, Dr. Codi joins us to share his insights as a cannabis pharmacist and to discuss our focus study, which was conducted with the support of the More Better Relief app and the Cannigma. Welcome, Codi.
A very busy man you are.
Yeah.
Well, it takes one to know one, y'all as well. And congratulations on 7 years in doing this. I think, Sherry, we first connected like 2021, maybe, I think was the first time I was on the Green Nurse podcast. This is prior to Holistic Caring. But it's great to see you guys grow and sort of build up to this compendium of both services, products, and support that patients so desperately need.
Yeah, that's the ecosystem that Elizabeth talks about.
I always talk about the ecosystem, right? I started with education and coaching, and then I was training nurses, and that became the impetus to my book, Cannabis for Health, Become a Coach, and that became the impetus for the programs at Holistic Caring. Now we're training nurses as continuing education, and then doing the products on top of it, because we can't always control for quality in the marketplace, right?
Definitely.
So doing it yourself, you can.
Yeah,
which is what we do.
Absolutely. And Dr. Codi, I just wanted to mention something. You know, my daughter, Rachel, I'm sure she's out there watching. I sent her this.
Hi, Rachel.
Letting her know that you are a pharmacist and that you were going to be coming on today. My daughter is just starting pharmacy school. She's literally just started her first year. And I'm really, really proud of you. Congratulations, Rachel. And she will soon be celebrating her white coat ceremony. And the interesting thing, you know, she started sending me, I'm having so much more dialogue with her now because they're teaching on the endocannabinoid system. So during her fourth week of school, she shared some photos of her learning. And to my surprise, the topic was the endocannabinoid system.
Wow.
And so, you know, did you learn about the endocannabinoid system in pharmacy school?
Certainly not in my first weeks. I had some, let's say some private tutoring sessions with Mary Jane, learning plenty about the cannabis plant. But no, to be sincere, I regrettably got no education on the endocannabinoid system. And the only pharmacists at my university who did, which we learned is pronounced Duquesne, it was those who took the drugs of abuse class. And this continues to be a challenge. My alma mater continues to be hesitant to offer continuing education, for example, around cannabis, which is pretty absurd in the context of the fact that in Pennsylvania, all cannabis is medical. There's no adult use market, and it is pharmacist dispense. And so like the fact that it's still controversial to educate pharmacists on a plant that is currently in their purview in the state is pretty crazy, but it's a reflection of the state of affairs. The nascent industry that we're in really requires us to shore up these sort of new and untapped, let's say, supply chains and markets that we don't really have good data on. So we're all growing together, and glad to have been in this growth with you folks for the last 4 years, and excited to share what we work together on with More Better.
Yeah. So, and I've asked this to all the clinicians that come on, because I certainly didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to be the green nurse or, hey, I'm going to start a podcast. There's usually a compelling story. So how did you get involved as a pharmacist with the Cannigma and the medicalization of cannabis?
Well, the Cannigma is sort of a story where I decided to go back. In short, let's see. Why did I go back to school to get a master's degree in cannabis science? Again, I had developed a relationship with the plant in college and had one very profound experience where we had made a batch of cake or brownies for the grandmother of the girl I was dating at the time. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, end of life. And grandma had the most profound and positive experience in the last few days of her life, despite the fact that for the previous week was taking morphine and lorazepam and was quite sedate and unable to enjoy any last moments. And with some infused cake on board, she ate a full meal. She called her grandchildren. It was really wild, right? And then just a couple of short days later, she passed, right? This wasn't a life-saving medicine, but it allowed her to die with dignity. And it was impressive. But remember, I didn't even learn about how cannabis was a medicine. So I just put that in my pocket, continued to consume cannabis for what ended up being probably undiagnosed ADHD or anxiety or whatever we want to slap on it. But I was able to leverage cannabis throughout, most of my life. And I continue to be a daily or almost daily user of THC and as well as other cannabinoids. Back to the point, my buddy, I'm at work, 2020. It's a relatively new job. They offer a new incentive. Let's go back to school and get everybody a degree, right? So they offer a significant increase in what they'll reimburse every year. Serendipitously, that same day, just out of nowhere, my best friend from college, who also partook in making these brownies with me around that same time, calls me and goes, hey, man, I'm driving down the highway. I see a billboard, says master's degree in cannabis. I thought of you. And it's the day that they announced that they're gonna reimburse more money. Now, I took out way too much money to become a pharmacist. It's absurd what an education costs nowadays. And I was not interested in spending another $25 or whatever $1,000 it would be to get a master's degree. However, with everything considered, I ended up applying and there's a bit of a story there, but eventually in 2020, I was admitted to the University of Maryland, MS in Medical Cannabis Science and Therapeutics. And from there, I started posting and I started sharing what I know as a pharmacist in the context of what cannabis medicine is. Because it turns out a pharmacist is not necessarily a pharma shill. A pharmacist is educated in the way drugs work. And if we tease apart what's inside of cannabis and plant medicine, we typically find drugs. And so the skill set that I had leading into this as a pediatric pharmacist, combined with my master's degree, I guess it made me somebody who knew something about this plant, and the Cannigma sort of scooped me up. And yeah, from there, we got a lot of eyes, educated a lot of people, and still trying to see where the journey will take us at the Cannigma. It's not done, but as anything in this new industry, it's always evolving.
Yeah, that's cool. That's like the perfect synergy and time.
Serendipity, I think.
Yeah. So many blessings for that. So, and when we talk about the medicalization of cannabis, which is what we're all wanting to see, it started in our home state of California in 1996 with medical cannabis, and it kind of crested across the country at different parts and different times, but it all came crashing with adult use, at least here in California and many other states that have gone from medical to adult use. And so
that's 2018 in California. Yes. It's 2012 in Colorado. Yep. I think it's 2014 in Washington State. Yep. And there was a lot of cannabis being produced, and then legalization went on, and there's even more cannabis. Like there's then a whole journey here, right?
Yeah, it explodes, and then it becomes just a commodity, and then the prices crash, and then what we're seeing here in California is you can't even hardly find good medical products anymore. You go to dispensaries, it's difficult to find good tinctures and that sort of thing. So what's it going to take for medicalization to come back, for these brands to start making soft gels and capsules and the things that patients are going to want in cannabis and the medical side?
It's really hard because we're talking about a really big problem, right? I mean, we're talking about something that's extremely complex. But to your point, medical has gotten us here. Every state has started with medical cannabis. 91 to 92% of Americans want medical cannabis, whilst somewhere between 50 and 60 agree on adult use cannabis. So we have an issue that Americans want, and I think that we should take the ball all the way across the finish line. However, commoditization, commercialization, et cetera, has sort of, gotten ahead of things, and we've got a race to the bottom on prices, and we're all focused on THC. And we really see every time a state turns online an adult use program, we see a significant drop in medical cannabis patients. Now, sure, some of those individuals probably didn't need their cannabis for medicinal use, but I would also argue that this means that the medical, system, or these medical markets that we've set up, and remember, there's 38 to 42 different ones, they're not really serving our patients. So I would say that's what we need to do. We need to find some sort of continuity around legality, and then we need to start adding more value, or consistently adding value in each market, because right now it's sort of like up to the individual. It depends on which state you're in, who directs you where. I have to think the number one reason that I run into people who could benefit from cannabis that haven't tried is because they don't know what to do. They don't know where to start. Right. And it's intimidating to call up a doctor who writes a card, or to step into a dispensary. And so I think we're normalizing, but we can't forget that this needs to be considered medicine, and we need to create some structure around that to make sure that everyone's entitled to their medicine, just like every other medicine.
Exactly.
Yes.
And without the taxation, because that's the other thing, with AB 2223 in here in California, where they wanted to remove hemp from the supply chain, just put it in the dispensaries. Well, there's no tax if you go to Walgreens and check out your prescription, but there is, 35% if you go to your dispensary.
Yeah, and some jurisdictions aren't even respecting like a medical cannabis card anymore, right? I believe it's Costa Mesa in Orange County, not far from where I live, is they don't recognize the medical tax relief, and that you just pay full taxes, which is crazy to me. I should say that that's hearsay, and I would have to go to validate that myself. I think, how do we get to medicalization? My opinion is when we've created all these different markets, all sorts of artificial sort of securities around profits and limited licenses and distribution, when we hyper regulate a plant, we create the wrong incentives, and those incentives have led to, I want to say, just commercialization, a loss of focus on what we need to do, which is to protect patients, protect access, protect their rights. There are patients still today where they can't consume their medicine and still have their job, right? I mean, this would be absurd. You can take an opioid prescribed by a doctor and can keep your same job, when we know that opioids are more addictive and potentially contributing more to workplace injuries. Yet here we are. And so we just need to continue to evolve this. And in my opinion, the best way to move this forward, the most likely to get through Washington, D.C., is a federal move towards medicalization.
So rescheduling to a 3 or a 6?
Yeah, that's an option. I mean, reschedule to a 3 is currently under conversation. For those to just catch up quickly, the executive branch under Biden pushed hard to have Health and Human Services review the current standing of cannabis on the Controlled Substance Act. On that review, they looked at it. They're like, hey, this really doesn't fit the Schedule 1 category, because we've got 40 plus states that have said, hey, marijuana is medicine, and that's acceptable use. So we've got Health and Human Services saying this is acceptable use. The FDA generally came out and said the same thing. And now we're all waiting on the DEA, who is notoriously pro-cannabis. They love this plan. They are now deciding whether they're going to accept the recommendation to move the plant to Schedule 3, which is, by the way, the same schedule as anabolic steroids, the juice, and ketamine, right?
And also Marinol, right? Isn't Marinol Schedule 3?
Marinol is a Schedule 3, and Marinol in liquid form, which is known as Syndrose, is actually Schedule 2, up with Vicodin and all of these very potent amphetamines, etc. So it's true that Marinol is a Schedule 3. That's good. I sometimes forget to mention that. So where they've already put THC, which, again, I think anyone listening to this probably has an idea about where this might fall. Yeah. So Schedule 3 is what's proposed. They don't have to accept this. It turns out that the DEA gets to make the rules and apply the rules how they see fit. So they could ignore us and tell the 35,000 American commenters to pound salt, and they're going to leave it 1. They could accept Schedule 3 and acknowledge that. It's confusing what that means, right? Is that all Schedule 3 drugs have to come through a pharmacist. None of the medical dispensaries or very few states have any pharmacy license. So there's going to be a whole scramble and confusion around what actually happens. And then, the DEA, some people are chatting about Schedule 2, trying to make an argument that this needs to be scheduled because it's addictive potential with, again, amphetamines, cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, all these drugs that when you hear, you don't think of the same risk profile as medical marijuana. But that's currently what's being debated. Personally, because I don't like any of those options, I have been advocating with Americans for Safe Access to adopt the Medical Cannabis and Cannabinoid Act and the language in there, which would create a new schedule, not under the DEA, not under the FDA, but under a new Office of Medical Cannabis, would pardon everyone, would totally decriminalize all future cannabis offenses. Everything would be civil and nothing criminal, because we cannot send people to jail for a plant. And a few other amazing things. I think Americans for Safe Access has been doing great things over the last 22 years. And I am proud and hopeful to support their proposed reforms, because I believe it protects patients in a way that none of the other things that have been proposed do.
Yeah, we do too. And so Asa, count us in on helping the efforts, anything, that we can do, because it makes sense.
One thing I also wanted to mention and acknowledge is there are 2 bills that have been floated through the Congress, the MORE Act and the CAOA, something about cannabis reforms. I can never remember that acronym. The point is, both of those are proposing a D schedule, a total removal under federal schedule. However, I do have some concerns around that. In my ideal world, that would be perfect, right?
That's what I want.
Yeah, of course, we all want that. But then it has to be like, well, what does that mean for our patients in every state? And when you start to get into that, right, the ideal versus what would actually happen, patients in Texas are still not going to have access to THC. They're still going to limit them at 5%. Or, patients in certain states may have no access because the conservative government there says it's a states' rights issue. If we make it a federal Class 6, then it would fall under the American Disability Act, and we would all have access and protections afforded to us for any other medicine. And so whilst I totally agree about social justice reforms and social equity reforms, I totally agree about pardoning everyone and removing everyone from jail, I fear that if we just kick to states, we're going to allow another wave of criminalization where we pay really strict rules around who can grow it, who can sell it, right? Florida is an example of this. Yes, on 3, but if you get caught growing weed, you are a criminal again. Come on.
No.
We can't do it that way. So I think that we need to be careful around what reforms we're asking for. In my personal opinion, setting up a federal system is the best way to protect patients. But that's just me. I'm open-minded and I respect your opinion. And by you, I mean you, the listener.
All of the viewers. Yes. And actually, presidential votes count too, because, R tends to want just state rights, and that would limit other people. D tends to be, let's do this federally. Let's make it federally legal. And, and I bet Schedule 6 would go over pretty big because it makes sense.
It matters. It does matter, but I really would stress Congress is the decision maker here, and they don't know that you care about this issue. They think everybody's satisfied with their hemp Delta A and access on that side, and their medical cannabis and their adult use. They think everybody's happy, but the truth is patients are losing out. Patients are losing access, like you mentioned, 2223 in California, supposedly made hemp illegal, although there's no evidence other than the words on paper to say that's true, right? Because they're not enforcing, nor will they be able to enforce.
They're going to liquor stores. I did read they're going to liquor stores.
They are, right? Which just goes to show you what they were really after, right? And so they threw the baby out with the bathwater, making products, potentially even the product that we're going to talk about from Bloom Hemp today, illegal. Meanwhile, really what they were trying to do is not let liquor stores sell infused beverages.
Correct.
And I think that should be done not through emergency use. Because the truth is California's got its fair share of problems, and kids buying drinks in 21 and over stores is certainly not our primary issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we don't want cannabis just treated like alcohol. This is something we want to go back to. How do we get more people introduced to cannabis as medical cannabis and getting them to adopt, optimize, and retain cannabis as part of their healthcare, not just, something to do on the weekends, but really, making this our daily bread when the market's not there yet. How do we get them to come on board? As a pharmacist, what are you telling people?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to remind people that medical got us here. There's nothing guaranteed about this adult use, and when we do go to the States, all look around. Most people have not necessarily been successful because of the compression that we mentioned, the extremely high barriers to entry, extraordinarily high taxes, including 280E, which is probably like what everyone's most excited about the potential Schedule 3. It would basically say that cannabis touching companies are no longer on par with criminal organizations like cartels, and would allow them to write off their standard business expenses. And I get that. It seems like a win, but I fear that they can't they're just going to tax us another way. They're still going to sin tax us. They're still going to come after us. And I'm not convinced it's going to be the saving grace of the industry. So once again, I believe that creating a new optimized market rather than just accepting what's sort of coming down the pipeline is great. But again, I respect opinions, and I think there's a lot of different pathways to the final goal, which is to fully decriminalize the plant, to fully create a medical market, and then allow adults to do what they want. I think this is generally what America is looking for, the middle, where we assure medicine.
Well, here's what I have to say. What would cannabis say? If we asked the cannabis plant, what would cannabis want? Seriously, if we ask the plant would want everyone to have access to it, whether people want to use it recreationally and go to adult use markets, whether people want to grow their own and have their own farm and cultivate, whether people want to have the medicalized model and get pharmaceutical versions, whether people want to shop at grocery stores or CVS.
For the botanical versions.
The botanical version, this should be available. So when I sit and meditate and I say, cannabis, what do you want? I want it all. That's what cannabis says to me.
Right. Normalization, right? No more treating it like it's some sort of like any other plant that we consume and have available and frequently touch. I mean, I think there's so many examples because we're becoming so secular and with the internet and everything.
Yeah.
Plant medicine's all over the place, whether it's Polynesia, where they're drinking kava, whether it's Southeast Asia, where they're consuming kratom, whether it's alcohol or betel nut, which is a tobacco substitute. There's so many psychotropics in the world. And the fact that we're treating this one as if it's some sort of crazy, unstudied, dangerous plant, it's nonsense.
Well, it all goes back to Nixon, and he knew, and Ehrlichman confessed that they knew they were lying.
Just recently, yep.
Yeah, but I keep going back to my 20 years in health insurance plans, right after my MBA, and I want this on the formulary. I want this on the formulary, literally, other than Marinol for chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. I want Epidiolex expanded. I want botanicals to be woven to that, because $100 for a 3,000 milligram tincture or 3,000 for Epidiolex, right? How do we get people to, going back to that question, just on the medical side, adopt, optimize, and retain as healthcare options?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing. As we need to stop creating a new independent, separate from everything market, and we need to integrate better. This means compounding pharmacies. This means nurses administering cannabis medicines at bedside, either in the acute care or at the hospice setting, the home health setting. We need to stop this that's that plant. We don't touch that plant.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that. And we're getting there. We are. We know we're in a different place than we were 10 years ago, Elizabeth. So I think there's progress at foot. I think that we're, part of that snowball that is rolling along, and that we need to keep advocating for more snow to back on, and let's roll down the hill towards a shared goal, which is access, reimbursement, guaranteed rights, no more discrimination. There's so much here, but I think in general, when you talk to people, the middle wants all of these things. It's only sort of extremes who want full prohibition, or maybe some corporate interests who really want a lot of consolidation and restrictions so that they can take over the market. But what we really need to do is support small businesses and stop treating this plant like it's a narcotic and start treating it like it's a plant.
Yeah, and patient education.
Yes.
It really does go back to
and
patient.
healthcare education. We got to almost start there, because until your healthcare professionals stop telling you that this is bad only, and are get informed on what we're really talking about, the pros and cons, not just the cons that they were taught in school, we can't really make that change. So I agree. And that's why I think educating doctors, nurses, pharmacists, PAs, everybody in school about the physiology, and then about the therapeutic application, and then about the side effects, instead of jumping right to the side effects, would be amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because I am convinced that if doctors, nurses, and pharmacists knew about the endocannabinoid system 14 years ago, I wouldn't have suffered as long as I have. I wouldn't have been on as many pharmaceuticals as I was on, and I would have been introduced to cannabis a lot sooner. So, but that just didn't happen. That didn't happen that way. It played out the way it did. But again, here we are today, very, very excited that we do have this plant, and that I did discover it, and that it did improve my quality of life, help me to get off of all the pharmaceuticals. I met Elizabeth here, my partner, and we're building something beautiful so that we can, help more patients. That's really what it is about. That's my tagline, is living your best life and helping others do the same. That's the bottom line for me. And so let's carry on a little bit more about Bloom. We were talking about small businesses. We are a small business, right? We have Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse. Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse is an education and consulting business. And we have Bloom Hemp, and this show is sponsored by Bloom Hemp. And we're going to talk a little bit about our study at Bloom Hemp with our Bloom Hemp Advanced Focus product, which is a combination of CBD, CBG, THCV, and botanicals. So I'm going to pull up the first article, because we worked with you, Codi, with the More Relief Better app, with you as chief medical officer of the Cannigma. So let me pull up that first article, and let's just dialogue a little bit about this process and what happened.
So first, I'd say the Cannigma historically has been sort of an online publisher, and that was sort of our biggest role here, trying to help craft the story. And then More Better is sort of the data partner. They are the creators of the Relief app, and they work with companies like this to gather data, consumer impact and feedback, to provide real world evidence or real world data. And it's been a real pleasure to work with them. I think there's so much here, but I just want to point out that I love your ladies, your commitment to this. And what's interesting is some of our most frequent customers in this project have been nurses. We've got Bloom Hemp, led by you two, Holistic Caring and Green Nurse. We also had Creva, and we had Trusted Canada Nurse. What I'm getting at is nurses are interested in evidence-based medicine. They're interested in supporting data-driven interventions, and I'm really proud to be collaborating with so many smart folks, and especially nurses.
Yeah. Nice. So this formulation, when we talk about CBD, CBG, THCV, and it's a 6 to 1 to 1, right? 1200, 200, 200. How common is that? And and then bringing in the botanicals, the lion's mane for cognition, the reishi for immune support, and the yerba mate for that all day energy. And like I put in the ad on our page, conquer the crosswords, excel in the boardroom, and still have energy left over to go work out. So
I like it.
I'm a night shift pharmacist. Anything I can do for a little extra energy is important. Now, I think there's a couple things to unpack, right? So we said there's a lot of stuff in this product, but if we start to break it down, right, we know we've got CBD as our primary ingredient, and we know that CBD does a lot of stuff in the body. In fact, it's actually kind of a challenging thing to pick out in the body. But one thing that's pretty well supported across all the literature is anti-inflammatory. And we know that inflammation is driving so many of the issues of the modern diseases that we're dealing with. So I think right off the bat, we've got CBD there. And We also have seen recently that at larger doses of CBD are boosting endocannabinoid levels, which can be really interesting as well. So I think you've already got a base there. But then you've got a lot of other products, cannabinoids and molecules in here that could be really interesting. I'm looking at the image that you have in front of me. I'll tell you the truth. I tried a bottle of Focus tincture and I did enjoy it. Perhaps the most remarkable thing is how well y'all made it taste. Not every cannabis product tastes good. And in this case, especially a tincture. And I've had some of your other ones. I think your GI formula, I don't enjoy the taste as much, but this one is delicious. And so I would point that out. Focus and metabolism support are the other two things here. And this lines up perfectly with your other ingredients. One of the reasons we were excited to collaborate and dig into it is we've got this sort of focused energy conversation. And I think that's probably twofold. THCV, which is the short-armed cousin of THC, actually has been shown to potentially increase metabolism and potentially be the anti-weed, right? If we think THC makes me sleepy, then this shorter-armed cousin might not make me sleepy. It could do the opposite. So that totally makes sense. And it lines up with the data, which I'm sure we're going to jump into in a second. And then metabolism support, same thing. THCV has actually undergone placebo-controlled trials in diabetics, looking at blood glucose control. There was a small but statistically significant improvement in those patients who were in, again, placebo-controlled, big study, real humans, like the whole kit and caboodle, and THCV did have a net benefit. Focus, kind of in line with the product's name. CBG is a cannabinoid I'm super hot on. I was just at the conference in Baltimore talking to SCC clinicians. There's a lot of clinicians warming up to CBG because so many of us are dealing with anxiety and so many of us are dealing with the being pulled in all the directions. Me too, from this modern world and the cell phone and my social media and my likes and blah, blah, blah. So I think that CBG is a tremendous addition to this formula as well. And there's reason to believe that it could be helpful with focus. Pharmacologically, CBG, cannabigerol, which is sort of the precursor to THC and CBD in the plant. CBG has been shown to activate a similar receptor to certain medicines that are FDA approved for ADHD and so for focus. And it does that by sort of quelling our what we call sympathetic tone, our fight and flight system. It kind of activates the feedback system and can bring it down a notch. So from just like a cannabinoid perspective, you've got a broad approach here, and I think that's reflected in the results.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Let's share the next. So Elizabeth, let's talk a little bit about the study.
So we paired up with the More Better Relief app. We wanted women because, menopausal women, especially women in childbearing years, women that are doing it too much, right? We're doing it all, but also starting to get sluggish, starting to gain weight, and having that metabolism perk of, the CBG and the THCV specifically, and helping to assuage some of the fears that people are having about cannabis, as well as because we CBG, we know that Ethan just had a study where CBG is very beneficial for anxiety and fear and all of that. But then THCV really suppressing appetite and helping people be able to eat less. And maybe even the CBD. I know when I first started taking CBD, my food choices changed. All of a sudden, I started to look at the kale a little bit more than the chips. I don't know why, it just did. So CBD, CBG, and THCV helping appetite, boosting metabolism, creating more of a burn physiologically with the brown fat and the white fat, and sort of talk about how THCV might really help, with that. And then we'll talk a little bit about productivity as well.
Yeah, we're actually just starting to tease like the groundbreaking work that's happening in endocannabinoid health is starting to look at adipose tissue, and those are our fat cells. And historically, we thought of these as just storage containers. We're like, these things, they just fill up kind of like a gas tank, and then your body burns them. But now the more we look, and it's not me, it's really smart PhDs that do groundbreaking work. The more we look at the endocannabinoid system within the adipose tissue, we're seeing a very unique role helping to define white fat function and brown fat function. And this is sort of each fat has either drives fat burn or fat accumulation. And in general, the thought is that the endocannabinoid system is responsible for sort of driving this fat tone balance. And for THCV, without getting into the nitty gritty, because we really don't have a great understanding, the early data suggests that THCV might be able to activate brown fat and sort of to put us into a fat burning state. At what dose, and all of that stuff is still sort of being concluded. But in the context of THCV, in a product that has a lot of CBD, we know they're going to play with the same enzymes. So having CBD on board there might be able to sort of increase the efficacy of the smaller amount of THCV in the product, just because CBD is able to kind of, let's call it box out, if we're talking basketball, box out those enzymes and allow THCV to have its functions.
Yeah.
All right.
And then we can switch over to focus.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So focus is something that, you mentioned earlier, we're constant ping pongs of task switching, and, going from work to our cell phones, to our family. But really being able to focus and apply yourself is lacking in today's world. Right. So let's talk about how we might be able to enhance focus with this.
Here we go. Well, the study results are in.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just look at the data, because I can yammer on around pharmacology, but the proof is in the pudding. And I think that's the whole point of the More Better effort, is to show people. We have 100 women taking this product. How the hell did they feel? And this 52% greater productivity, 40% focus. I think those two speak volumes.
Yeah, I thought this was 2.2 hours of greater productivity, which is a 52% improvement, right? Participants stated they're more likely to feel and be more productive when taking the Bloom Hemp Advanced Tincture. Thought that was great. 40% with increased focus. So 40% of participants reported improvement on task, focusing while using the Bloom Hemp Advanced Focus Tincture. 72% felt less stress while using the Bloom Hemp Advanced Focus Tincture, which translated to improved quality of life scores. 70% increased mood, reported better overall mood on the days that they used Bloom Hemp Advanced Focus Tincture, which translated to greater happiness scores. 78% said that the formulation surpassed their expectations. So that's really good. But the participants felt that the Bloom Hemp Advanced Focus Tincture met or exceeded their expectations for a CBD product. And this was really surprising to me, because people were only on this product for 3 weeks. And there was a 52% decrease in appetite, and 24% of the consumers actually lost weight.
Yeah. So goal achieved across all measures, right? 2.2 hours of greater productivity is really huge, because, it's about efficiency, right? And this is really effective efficiency. When you think about, take a dropper of tincture a day, you're going to get about 40 milligrams CBD, about 7 of CBG, and about 7 of the THCV, which is significant enough to really affect that appetite and that focused energy. And so, and the study participants aged 30 to 70, and all of these different line items you can read on the website at bloomhemp.com. Just click research on the left bar and it'll come right into here. But it was really significant to me to really see, as well, not just the focused energy and the metabolism, but that the happiness increased and the stress went away, which is what
I'm looking at the report right now, Elizabeth, and sort of the raw data report. And we said 50% had an increase in mood. I just wanted to point out 22% said, or people said who improved mood, that 22% happier, and 20% less anxious. So, I mean, we have a substantial increase in 50% of people, and then 20% better. Most people are looking for like 2% better, right? Like people are reaching for whatever they can do to feel a little bit better. And this is quite a bit. So I thought that was a super impressive thought. And then, like, from a focus perspective, I am somebody who's all over the place. I have to think a lot of people are dealing with this. ADHD has never been more prevalent because, media, basically, everything's shiny around us.
Yeah.
The numbers that were expressed by people, were really strong. And then their feelings, like how they described the effects of the product were really good. So like the word cloud is astonished, beneficial, energizing, alert. I think that there's real enlightening. So these are really powerful words that we didn't prompt people to say.
Right.
And I think that that's proof that even if we don't have like this one effect, right? This product isn't sort of focused in on one. It's kind of treating you, I think, more broadly. We're in a world where we're getting our attention pulled, and obviously that comes with an energy drain. And this product, I think, is really in a lot of ways support, right? It's focused, but really what that translates to for me is support.
Yeah. And we're kicking off this next email campaign with the Cannigma. It's coming out pretty soon. People are thinking about the holidays, Thanksgiving, overeating, and then all of the how slammed we are for time during the holidays. So having a sale, the Cannigma sale is going to be Focus 30, so you can take 30% off your order. And then talk about this a little bit off the cuff. This was not in the study. This might be something that we can do another study on. But everybody that we've talked about with this product, Focus, they said it's good for hangovers. So what do you think about that?
Yeah,
how does that work? Yeah, because we know a lot of people are going to overconsume a little alcohol, right? And then you got to work
around the holidays.
Right. You got to go to work in the morning. So
one too many eggnogs. I've definitely been guilty.
I know that cannabis, like THC, has generally been good for hangovers. But then again, too, oftentimes when people consume alcohol, I've been studying, you produce more receptors in your brain because your brain is actually seeking the endocannabinoids to protect it from the alcohol. So my concern is, right, we want to be able to use a product to provide hangovers that people aren't going to get more impaired.
But talk about.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just trying to break. First of all, it's hard to talk about hangovers and say how something treats them because if you go to the literature, we don't know what causes hangovers.
Yeah.
And so, like, that in itself becomes a challenge, right? When you don't understand a problem, it's hard to understand the solution. Now, we didn't do this in the study. We didn't ask about it, but I'm certainly interested whether it's helpful. And you let me know. I might have to take advantage of that 30% off. Thinking about what we believe might be underlying hangovers is inflammation. We've got this idea that this is a large, CBD is the big gun here in your product. It's certainly maybe not the most refined or most targeted, but it's sort of the most abundant. And I think that's probably part of it. But beyond that, people do use THC and report quite a lot of benefit, nausea, etc. There might be something more going on here around balancing electrolytes that we really don't have a great understanding of. But we know that dysregulation of electrolytes is another one of those theories. And we know that the endocannabinoid system is responsible for balancing a lot of these out, especially in our brain cells. And so it sort of makes sense to me that a multimodal medicine, you're not just throwing one molecule, it's not just CBD, that's coming at it from a lot of angles, could be of benefit. The understanding of what causes a hangover is just so poorly understood. Believe it or not, despite, millions of people dealing with this every day, there's just not a lot of evidence. But I would definitely consider cannabis and potentially this cannabis product in any hangover treatment alongside proper hydration and, frankly, some sleep.
Sleep and electrolytes. And, it might not just be the cannabinoids. It could be the lion's mane, the reishi, and the yerba mate as well. A little bit of that caffeine type of pick-me-up in the morning can help quicken your step and clarify your cognition a little bit.
Yep. But the bottom line is we know that this formulation of CBD, CBG, THCV, we've done real world evidence with the Cannigma. Dr. Codi Peterson was part of this study that we did and helped us to bring it together and to finalize it and to get the results out and the articles out. And so we're really, really grateful for that. Grateful for this formulation. Thank you for coming on and sharing this with us. Do you have any other questions?
Well, I thought one thing that was interesting to share, people were probably interested to learn how much people were using. I wanted them to know that on average, people were consuming the product about daily, one time a day. and used about 1 milliliter. Because I'm sure people in the comments are wondering, how much of this do I have to take, trying to plan their month. And so, again, all of these results that we mentioned, the increased productivity, the increase in focus, all just with about 1 cc of the product. There are a couple outliers here and there, but on average, 1 milliliter 1 time a day is what people were taking. We saw some people taking it twice a day as well. And before we go, I definitely need to address the comments just because, I want to definitely talk to our friend Kenny.
Yes, let's address the comments. Let me look. Kenny, here we go. Okay, so we've got in the comments, we've got someone asking about CHS. Terpenes, study the terpenes and find out which particular terpenes are for you.
Hey, we got a lot to learn on that still, Scotty. The terpenes are complicated and, they interact with a very complicated system in our body. But I would recommend, trial and error, patients smelling the products, consuming the products, and seeing how they make you feel. I want to talk about, just because it's relevant, Scotty also said that if you don't have a medical marijuana card in Arkansas and you get caught with cannabis, it is still a Schedule III substance, which would suggest to me that it would be a crime the same way if you were found with a cannabis or a Xanax that wasn't yours, that would be against the law. So again, let's not, when we're thinking about reforms, anyone who's listening, let's not set up a situation where we can recriminalize cannabis under, if you don't play by the special rules that they've created that are unfortunately probably aimed at the people who had a lot of money to influence those decisions. Kenny, can you show us Kenny's comment? I want to show 533, or I can just verbally address it because it's something that I'm passionate about right now.
CHS?
This one here, the 533?
Yeah.
If I can show it. Hold on.
So Kenny asked, what about cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome? And this is kind of getting off topic from our thing, but it's a big focus of mine right now. I'm working with some close friends in the University of California, Irvine, and Dr. Ariana Nelson to do a study, a research survey to understand cannabinoid hyperemesis better. So Kenny is describing that. He was a consumer of cannabinoids and THC, and he developed sickness. And you see this, he was sick for 15 years, probably not realizing that it might have been the cannabis. He wants me to focus. Cannabis does have side effects, and I agree, it does. It is certainly less than many of the pharmaceuticals and less severe, but this particular issue is increasingly happening, and we want to understand it better. I'm not going to get into the details. Oh, go ahead. Sherry.
I do. But we're seeing it more with, in my particular experience, I've seen one patient with it. He was on my podcast back in 2018. I haven't seen or heard of anyone getting it from using CBD.
No, it's all THC.
It's all high THC. Is that? Can you confirm?
Yeah. So again, we're lacking data. Newer condition. A lot of people never heard of it. We don't understand it well. But absolutely, the most strong indicator of someone who's developing CHS is chronic long-term consumption of high THC products. That means usually 3, 4, or 5 times a day over multiple years, usually, not exclusively. Now, I want to note that this condition is noted to be cannabinoid hyperemesis, not cannabis hyperemesis, because cannabinoids, such as synthetic cannabinoids, K2 spice, have been associated with it before. And there is one case report of a little boy who's super complex and has a seizure disorder and is on a ketogenic diet who developed it from Epidiolex, which is prescription CBD.
Wow.
So I want to point out that this is probably something to do with the endocannabinoid system. We don't have a great understanding of what it is, but absolutely, specifically, this condition is strongly associated with high THC consumption over long periods of time. We want to understand it better and identify it better, identify risk factors, identify use patterns. And that's the focus of our study. So if you're listening to this, you're like, what the heck's he talking about? Just Google my name and cannabinoid hyperemesis. You'll find a YouTube video. And all over those videos, you will find links to survey that I'm working on. I can share it with Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse here as well.
Dr. Codi, please share it with us, and we'll make sure that we attach it to the podcast and circulate it throughout so people have access to this.
For sure.
Yeah, this is some of my big focus because I think cannabis is such amazing medicine, but every medicine comes with two sides of its the coin, right? And I think that while we have this amazing medicine that might improve focus and reduce appetite and do all that, the same plant produces a molecule that causes impairment and potentially addiction or dependence. And it's all about balance.
And
Yeah,
the other
it
thing
is.
too, a lot of people, there's also misinformation as well. And I want to clear that up, and you can clear that up. You'll either confirm or deny, but just because you throw up once from taking too much cannabis doesn't mean you have cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. It is your body's protective mechanism actually protecting you from taking more, right? Your body saying,
sometimes you just get too high, right? Like I think that I love your mnemonic, by the way. I love your high. I'm not going to remember it right now, but inspired and
inspiration, growth, and healing.
Hope, inspiration, growth, and healing. I think it's beautiful. But there is an acute response that can happen with THC, especially if alcohol is also on board, where we can vomit. That is emesis, not hyperemesis, not lots and lots of vomiting that won't stop. We get so dehydrated. These patients are suffering with bouts of emesis or episodes that can last hours, days, or even sometimes a week or more. And this is not able to keep food down, not able to have drinks, feeling like crap the whole time. Very different. Now, there's also a lot of talk around pesticide exposure. I'm open-minded to what's causing this condition, but right now, for a lot of reasons, there's not a lot of evidence to support that. And we're just trying to understand it better. I don't know what the issue is. I just know that I'm seeing this condition in the hospital, and we need to get to the bottom of it. And yes, it is strongly associated with high THC products. So not very pertinent to all of our previous conversation, but I wanted to make sure I acknowledge Kenny. Kenny, reach out to me, DM me. We're going to share the survey here. We'd love to hear your experience and better understand this condition.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it is all about balance and focus in the morning, trilogy in the evening.
Yeah,
that's what
I think there's an argument to be made, right? And a joint at night. I think that there's like there is a balance that can come together, and we have to acknowledge that THC is amazing medicine, and it comes with this propensity for a lot of use, and balance that, mitigate it, have real conversations. Awesome. Maybe some real world evidence too, real world data.
Yep. Kenny, I will reach out to you and make sure that you get Dr. Codi's information after we're done with the podcast for sure. So we want to share this information far and wide. Dr. Codi Peterson from the Cannigma, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your experience, your strength, your wisdom, all of your knowledge with our viewers. We're extremely grateful. Yeah. And remember, everyone, what it's truly all about. It is all about living your best life and helping others do the same. We're going to end with one final video. It's you haven't seen the high video yet.
Yeah.
You're going to love this one. If you like the last one,
I like the videos. The videos are good. Nice producer.
This one. Yeah. This is all about what it's all about.
God bless.
We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And the more research I did, the more I discovered the cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses Group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.